They told me not to visit, said the house was under renovation. For 5 years I believed them. My name is Caroline Mercer. I'm 62 years old, a retired literature teacher from Portland, Oregon. My days used to be filled with coffee, gardening, and quiet mornings on the porch. I thought my life had already told its last big story, but life has a cruel way of turning the page when you least expect it. My son Michael was a pediatric oncologist, brilliant, kind, a little secretive since he married Sophie, a biomedical researcher. They moved to the coast and bought a house in Mendocino. Every time I asked to visit, Michael would smile and say, "Not yet, Mom. The renovations are still a mess," so I waited. Every holiday, every birthday I waited. Then, one morning I got a call from a man named David Lorne, Michael's attorney. His voice was calm in the way people speak when they're about to destroy your world. He told me there'd been a boating accident. Michael and Sophie were gone. I remember the sound of my coffee cup hitting the floor, the way grief doesn't rush in like water but seeps through every crack in your soul. Days later, David asked to meet. His office smelled of cedar and silence. He handed me an envelope with my son's handwriting and a single key attached. "Michael wanted you to have the Mendocino house," he said. I stared at it, confused. The house they never let me see. He nodded. "He said you'd understand when you got there." Understand what? That was the question that kept me awake for nights. The key felt heavy, like it carried more than metal. Maybe guilt, maybe truth. 5 years of locked doors, 5 years of distance, and now, an invitation from the grave. That's how it began, with a key, and a lie that was never about renovations. The morning I decided to drive to Mendocino, the sky hung low and gray, as if even the weather hesitated to see what waited for me there. I packed a small suitcase, grabbed the key, and started the car. The drive along the Pacific Coast Highway stretched like a ribbon of silence beside the ocean. Every mile carried both memory and regret. I kept replaying Michael's voice in my head, soft but distant, "Not yet, Mom." I remembered how he used to call every Sunday before the renovations began, and how the calls grew shorter, then stopped. Grief has a strange way of making you remember the small absences more than the big ones. The radio played static most of the way. I drove through mist and light rain, watching waves crash against the rocks far below. I thought of how much Michael loved the sea, how he used to say it reminded him of hope because it never stayed still. By the time I reached Mendocino, the sun had started to break through the clouds. The house stood at the edge of a cliff, white walls gleaming against the gray sky, wildflowers scattered across the yard. I stepped out of the car expecting the sound of construction hammers, drills, men shouting, but there was nothing. Only the wind and the sea. The front door opened easily. The key fit as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, the air smelled clean, faintly chemical, like a hospital corridor. My footsteps echoed on the polished floors. There were no moving boxes, no signs of renovation. Everything was spotless, organized, almost sterile. I wandered through the living room, the kitchen, then down a hallway lined with doors. Behind one, I found what looked like a medical ward. 6 small beds, machines with blinking lights, IV poles, monitors still running. In another room, shelves filled with medical files, children's drawings taped to the wall, stick figures with bright smiles. I stopped in front of a window where the curtains were drawn. When I opened them, I saw the ocean stretching endlessly beyond the glass, and reflected faintly in the window was me, an old woman standing in a hospital that shouldn't exist. It wasn't a home, it was something else entirely. I whispered into the quiet, "Michael, what were you doing here?" The wind outside didn't answer, but I swear for a moment I felt the house breathing. The next morning, I returned to the house with a notebook and gloves, determined to understand what Michael had been hiding. The place was too organized to be abandoned suddenly. There were charts still on clipboards, medicines sorted neatly, even coffee cups washed and placed upside down in the drying rack. Someone had left with purpose, not panic. In a small office off the main hall, I found a locked filing cabinet. The key from Michael's envelope fit perfectly. Inside were folders labeled with first names: Emma, Louise, Harper, Jonah, children. Each file had photos attached, smiling faces, handwritten thank you notes, and treatment records. One page stopped me cold. Protocol 7, 73% positive response. I read the line again and again. It wasn't an experiment gone wrong. It was something that had worked. Dozens of cases, children who had been declared terminal by hospitals showed measurable recovery. My heart started racing. There were letters to parents writing to Michael and Sophie, thanking them for giving their children another summer, one more birthday, a chance to grow up. Some of them ended with promises to keep quiet to protect the clinic. It wasn't just a hospital. It was a secret refuge. I sat down, holding one of the letters in my hands. The words blurred through my tears. I had spent 5 years wondering why my son had drifted so far away, blaming myself for his distance. But now I saw it differently. He hadn't been keeping me out of his life. He'd been keeping me safe. In a drawer beneath the desk, I found a flash drive. When I plugged it into the computer on the desk, a video opened. Michael's face filled the screen. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "Mom," he began softly, "if you're seeing this, it means things didn't go the way we hoped. This place, it's more than a clinic. It's hope for kids nobody else would treat. But we're running out of time." He paused, eyes glistening. "Promise me you'll look after them. Even if you can't save me, save them." The video ended, the screen went black, and the only sound left was the ocean outside, steady and endless. I whispered through my tears, "Oh Michael, all those years you weren't avoiding me. You were protecting me." That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of the waves below the cliffs felt heavier, almost warning. I sat in the kitchen, a single lamp on, Michael's files spread across the table. Every name was a story, every chart a heartbeat. Sometime after midnight I heard tires crunching on the gravel driveway. My pulse quickened. I turned off the lamp and waited. Headlights swept across the window, then went dark. 3 silhouettes approached the front door. Before I could react, the door opened with a code on the keypad I hadn't noticed before. A woman's voice whispered, clear, "No alarm." I stepped out of the shadows. "Who are you?" The woman startled, then froze. She was in her 40s, wearing scrubs under a gray jacket. "You must be Caroline," she said quietly, "Michael's mother." 2 others stood behind her, a tall man with a stethoscope around his neck, and a younger assistant carrying a case. They introduced themselves as Dr. Lena Morales, Dr. James Porter, and Noah. Lena took a slow breath. "We didn't expect anyone here yet. Michael always said if something happened, you might come." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my voice cracked. What was this place? James spoke softly, "A sanctuary. For children whose hospitals gave up on them. We ran it off the grid, no insurance, no boards, no politics." He paused, guilt in his eyes. "Your son saved 63 lives. But the authorities called it illegal experimentation." I looked at the empty beds, the small drawings taped to the walls. The weight of what she said hit me. "And now?" Lena hesitated. "4 children are still here in the guest house behind the lab. We're keeping them stable, but without the next shipment of medication, they won't last." The room fell silent except for the wind against the windows. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just standing in my son's secret. I was standing in his unfinished fight. And somehow, it was mine now. The following morning, fog rolled in thick over the ocean, wrapping the house in silence. I sat at Michael's desk, staring at his handwriting on the pages spread before me, notes, chemical formulas, treatment schedules. None of it made sense to me, but the desperation behind every line was unmistakable. Lena brought me coffee and set it down gently. "We can't stay here much longer," she said. "Once the authorities trace Michael's assets, they'll come for this property." "What about the children?" I asked. James rubbed his temples. "They're stable for now. But without access to the compound Sophie was synthesizing, their cancer will return." Later that day, I opened another file Michael had labeled for Mom. Inside was a sealed envelope and a flash drive. I plugged it into the computer. His face appeared again, this time thinner, paler. "Mom," he said softly, "if you're watching this, it means Sophie and I couldn't keep the program safe. We knew this might happen. You'll hear things about us, words like illegal, reckless, unethical. Don't believe them. We did this because someone had to." He hesitated, eyes full of sorrow. "You can end it. Or you can keep it alive. But whatever you choose, choose knowing it will cost you." The screen went black. My hands trembled. I could almost feel his presence in the room, urging me not to give up. That night, my phone rang from an unknown number. When I answered, a man's voice, cold and steady, said, "Shut it down, Mrs. Mercer. You're in way over your head." Then he hung up. The next day, Lena found a letter taped to the gate. It read, "Leave before the investigation begins. We'll make sure no one gets hurt." Fear settled deep in my stomach. I wasn't built for this threats, danger, secrecy. I was a retired teacher, a widow who once graded poetry essays and tended roses. But grief changes you. It strips you down to what you're truly made of. That night, I sat in Michael's chair holding the key that had started everything. I stared at the photo of a little girl on his desk, Grace, one of his first patients, the one who didn't make it. Her smile was pure light. I whispered, "You left me your fight, didn't you, Michael?" The ocean outside thundered against the rocks, and for the first time I didn't flinch. 2 days later, I drove to San Francisco with the flash drive locked in my purse. The GPS led me to a glass tower downtown, the headquarters of Medinex Partners. Michael's old correspondents had mentioned their name again and again. If anyone knew why he died, it was them. The lobby smelled of polished marble and money. I told the receptionist I was here to see Ethan Cole, the company's CEO. She looked uncertain until I said my son's name. Her face changed, and within minutes I was escorted to the top floor. Ethan Cole was younger than I expected, sharp suit, charming smile, the kind of man who could sell sincerity by the pound. He offered his hand, but I didn't take it. "Mrs. Mercer," he said smoothly, "I was sorry to hear about Michael. He was a visionary. We lost someone remarkable." "Did you?" I asked. "Because from what I've seen, you didn't lose the research." His smile flickered. "We have copies of some early data. Michael was passionate but unrealistic. We could have made his work legitimate. We still can if you let us." He slid a folder across the table. Legal documents, transfer of ownership for Michael's files, patents, research rights. In exchange, Medinex would assume all liabilities and ensure the continued development of Protocol 7. I skimmed the pages, my heart pounding. "You want to own it," I said. "We want to protect it," he corrected. "Think of it, Mrs. Mercer, your son's name in medical journals. A legacy. But it needs structure and funding, something he couldn't manage." I closed the folder. "And what happens to the children still depending on his treatment?" He leaned back, folding his hands. "Those cases were off record. For everyone's sake, it's better they're forgotten." That was the moment I knew. The warmth in his voice wasn't sympathy. It was threat wrapped in silk. When I stood to leave, he said softly, "Don't make the same mistake your son did. The ocean can be unpredictable." I turned back. "So can grief," I said, and I walked out. By the time I returned to Mendocino, the threats had grown louder. An unmarked car sat outside the property at night. Anonymous letters arrived almost daily. One morning, Lena found the back gate unlocked and tire tracks in the mud. Whoever wanted this place gone wasn't going to stop. We spent hours in the office sorting through files, digital backups, video logs, anything that could prove what Michael had achieved. Every page was a piece of truth someone was trying to erase. Then, the power went out. Lena checked the fuse box. "Not a storm," she muttered. "Someone cut the line." That night, I made a decision. I was done hiding. I called Claire Donovan, a journalist I'd followed for years. She was known for exposing medical corruption, smart, relentless, fearless. When I told her my name, she went silent for a moment. Then she said, "I know who your son was. I tried to reach him 2 years ago." The next morning, Claire arrived with a small camera crew. We spent hours recording interviews. I told her everything: Michael's research, the secret clinic, the children still under treatment, the threats, Ethan Cole. Every word felt like reopening a wound, but truth demands blood. Within days, the story went public. The underground pediatric clinic that changed everything. The headline read, "My son's photo filled every screen, every social feed." Some called him a hero, others a criminal, but it didn't matter. The silence was broken. Medinex released a statement calling the claims fabrications by a grieving mother. Their lawyers sent warnings, but Claire's network refused to back down. Public pressure mounted. Parents of surviving children began sharing their stories. Videos of their recovered sons and daughters flooded the internet. For the first time, the narrative wasn't written by power, it was written by truth. That night, standing on the porch, I watched the ocean shimmer under the moonlight. For 5 years, I had waited for permission to see that house. Now the whole world was finally seeing what was inside it. Sometimes, I whispered, the only way to protect a secret is to expose it. 2 weeks after the story went viral, everything around me turned into chaos. News vans lined the cliff road, drones buzzed over the house, and lawyers filled my voicemail with warnings. The authorities launched an investigation, but I knew it wouldn't reach the real people behind my son's death unless I made them speak. That's when I called Ethan Cole. I told him I'd changed my mind, that I was ready to cooperate and hand over Michael's data. His tone softened instantly. "That's the right decision, Mrs. Mercer," he said. "Let's meet in person." We arranged to meet at a coastal hotel halfway between Mendocino and San Francisco. Before leaving, Claire wired a small recording device into a pendant that once belonged to Sophie. "He'll try to charm you," she warned. "Just let him talk." The restaurant was quiet, elegant, expensive. Ethan greeted me with the same polished smile. "You did the smart thing," he said. "We can make this right for everyone." He talked for nearly 20 minutes, circling around the same pitch: funding, protection, control. I listened, nodding, waiting. Then I asked, "What really happened that night on the boat?" He froze, eyes narrowing. "Accidents happen," he said slowly. "Michael was a liability. He wouldn't compromise." I leaned forward. "So you removed the liability?" His lips curved slightly. "He left us no choice. Do you know how much one discovery like his could cost the industry?" Every word dripped with pride, not regret. He didn't see the small light blinking inside my pendant. When he finished, I stood and whispered, "You just confessed, Mr. Cole." Confusion flickered in his eyes, then the sound of footsteps filled the room. 2 agents appeared, badges raised. Claire entered behind them, camera rolling. Ethan's composure cracked. "You set me up," he hissed. "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourself." As they led him away, I felt neither triumph nor revenge, just release. The kind that comes when truth finally exhales after years of being buried. Justice didn't roar that day, it whispered, but I heard it clearly. 3 months later, the house by the sea was no longer a secret. The gates stood open, sunlight spilling across the gravel path, and laughter echoed from the garden where silence once lived. The government investigation confirmed everything Medinex had been suppressing: Michael's research to protect a pharmaceutical monopoly. Ethan Cole and several executives were indicted. For the first time in years, the word hope didn't sound naive. The Mendocino property was converted into a legal pediatric treatment center under the National Cancer Institute's supervision. They named it the Grace Foundation after the little girl who first inspired Michael's work. Every week I drove from Portland to visit. The ocean that once felt like mourning now sounded like renewal. I'd watch children run along the path with their IV poles decorated in ribbons and stickers. Parents smiled again. Nurses played soft music through the halls. Lena became the medical director, James handled research, and Noah still fixed every machine with quiet devotion. They always saved a chair for me by the window. Sometimes, when I read to the kids, I caught glimpses of Michael in their faces, the same spark of fight, the same curiosity. One boy asked me once, "Was your son a doctor too?" I smiled and said, "He still is in his own way." At night, I stayed in the small upstairs room overlooking the sea. I'd sit at the desk, writing letters I'd never send. Letters to Michael. I told him about every milestone, every child who got better, every storm that passed without breaking the windows. One evening, I placed his photo on the windowsill and whispered, "Your secret didn't die with you." It became a legacy. The waves below glowed orange in the setting sun. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace, not because everything was fixed, but because I had found a reason to keep going. The house had started as a lie, but now it was the most honest place I'd ever known. Some nights, when the wind sweeps across the cliffs, I still hear Michael's voice in the distance. Not words, just the rhythm of his calm breathing as he worked through the night trying to save one more child. People ask me if I ever wanted revenge. I tell them the truth: no, revenge is short-lived. What I wanted was continuation, to finish what they tried to destroy, to prove that courage doesn't vanish with age, it deepens with time. I used to think justice was loud sirens, headlines, courtroom applause. But now I know it's quieter than that. Justice is a nurse holding a child's hand during treatment. It's a mother watching her son's work live on after he's gone. It's the ocean, endless and forgiving, washing away what was broken so something new can grow. Before I leave each visit, I walk down to the cliff's edge, close my eyes, and whisper, "We did it, Michael." If you believe courage has no expiration date, tap like, share this story, and tell me, what would you have done if you found that key? Because sometimes the smallest key can open the door to the biggest truth of all.